One of the loneliest parts of family estrangement is not only the loss itself, it's the pressure to be over it. People say move on as if you have misplaced your keys, not lost an entire relationship, an entire history, and often an entire version of family life you once hoped might still be possible. So I want you to picture this. Someone walks up to a widow 6 months after her husband dies and says, "Why are you still talking about this? Just get over it already." Most of us would immediately recognize how cruel that sounds. And yet, people living with family estrangement hear some version of that all the time. Just let it go. Stop dwelling on it. Life is too short to hold grudges. Why are you still affected by this? If you have ever heard those words and felt something inside you sink because part of you wondered whether they might be right, this video is for you, because the reason you cannot simply just move on may have nothing to do with weakness, bitterness, or being stuck. It might be because family estrangement is not the kind of loss most people think it is. I'm a chartered psychologist and I have been working with people experiencing family estrangement for over a decade. It was the topic of my doctoral research, and I have lived experience of this myself. So when I talk about being told just to move on, I am not speaking from some detached academic perch. I understand what it feels like when someone says, just let it go. And something deep inside says, would if I could, but I don't know how. And that combination of professional expertise and personal understanding is what drives everything I'm creating on this channel. I want to unpack why moving on from family estrangement is so much more complicated than other people realize, including ourselves. And if you sometimes found yourself thinking, why am I still affected by this? Stay with me. If you have ever been having a seemingly normal day and then suddenly felt overwhelmed by strong feelings of sadness, anger, guilt, or longing, I want you to stay with me. And if you have ever quietly wondered what is wrong with me, that I cannot get past this, I want you to hear this very clearly. There may be absolutely nothing wrong with you, not a single thing. The problem is not that you are broken. The problem may not be that you lack resilience, maturity, forgiveness, willpower. The problem may be that the advice you've been given is based on a fundamental misunderstanding or lack of understanding of what family estrangement actually is. So I'm going to explain why family estrangement is so hard to simply move on from, why the grief can keep resurfacing years later, and what healing can look like when closure may arrive in the way you hoped. So most people, including well-meaning friends, colleagues, relatives, and sometimes even therapists, treat family estrangement like a straightforward loss. They imagine it a little bit like a breakup or a falling out. Something painful happened, you grieve it, you process it, you put it behind you, and you move forward. That model can work for many other kinds of loss, but family estrangement doesn't fit neatly into that paradigm. And one of the reasons it doesn't is because estrangement is rarely a single event. It's usually an ongoing living condition. Let me explain what I mean by that. When someone dies, the loss is devastating, but there's a clear reality around that. The person's gone, the relationship has reached a definitive endpoint. There are rituals, there's a funeral, other people recognize that something really enormous and significant and painful has happened. Family estrangement isn't like that, it's different. The person is usually still alive, they are somewhere in the world living their life. You might see their social media posts. Oh my God, how painful can that be? You might hear about them through another family member. You might bump into them, maybe at a family event or at a funeral or a family emergency. You might find out they're ill, that they've moved house. Oh gosh, yeah, I hear that one a lot. That they've had a child, that they've remarried, or that they've told a version of the story that you barely recognize. So each of these moments can become a fresh encounter with loss. So that's really important to remember. It's not one wound that you grieve at once. It's a wound that can keep being reopened over, the passage of time and throughout the passage of time. So I'm going to tell you about Emma. She's been estranged from her mother for 5 years. Most days, normal. She functions well. She works. She's got her friends. She's got a good life that she's built. She has been to therapy. She understands why the distance was necessary. Then Mother's Day arrives. Suddenly, every shop window, every email campaign, every social media post is telling her to celebrate the person she's trying to grieve or protect herself from or make sense of. So that year, she deletes the emails, avoids all the cards, and asks a friend to walk with her so she's not alone with it. She's not back at square one. She hasn't failed to heal. So that's really important. She's simply been placed back inside a cultural script that assumes everyone has a mother they can safely celebrate. This was always a big pain point for me every Mother's Day. What a wonderful mother and, best mum in the world. And of course, I didn't feel that way. So sending a Mother's Day card felt very incongruent. And navigating that was really incredibly difficult. So this is one reason that family estrangement can be so hard to move on from. The world keeps handing you reminders that your family does not fit the story society wants families to fit into. So this is where I want to bring in a concept that can be enormously relieving for people who are experiencing this. The researcher Pauline Boss she developed the idea of ambiguous loss. So ambiguous loss is really a helpful term because it describes losses that don't have a clear ending. Sometimes the person is physically present, but psychologically they're absent. There is no clear goodbye, no funeral, no ritual, no social script that tells everyone what happened and how they can support you. And family estrangement is one of the most powerful examples of ambiguous loss. The relationship may be gone, but it isn't entirely gone, if you see what I mean. The person still exists. The memories still exist. The possibility of reconciliation may still exist, even if that feels really remote. And the hope may still exist in some quiet corner of your heart or mind, even when sort of rationally that contact might not be safe or possible right now. There's always this sort of glimmer or wish or hope or longing. So the ambiguity is precisely why that kind of closure can feel so out of reach, because closure usually requires a level of certainty and finality, and ambiguous loss denies you both. And one of the hardest parts of estrangement is that even after the distance has begun, the story may not stop changing. New hurts can still happen. It doesn't end there. Often that can be also the beginning of other new hurts or struggles. You might learn that the person you're estranged from has been saying things about you to other family members or people that you know. You might discover they have rewritten the history of what happened as well. You might be excluded from family events, not because you made that choice, but because other people have chosen sides. These are new wounds. You might watch siblings or cousins or extended family members continue as if nothing happened, while you were left carrying the emotional weight of a rupture that nobody wants to name. And then there is hope. Hope is one of the most complicated parts of estrangement. Even when someone has made a firm and healthy decision to maintain distance, a small part of them may still hope that one day things could be different, hope that the other person will change, hope that they will finally understand, hope that the phone might ring and the voice on the end will say, "I'm sorry, I finally get it, I see it." That hope isn't weakness, it is human. But it also means that the door may never feel fully closed. And that's so hard. Maybe it's not a good thing or a bad thing, is it? When the door never finally or fully closes. The problem is grief has nowhere simple to land, this whole ambiguity piece. And that brings me to one of the most important reframes in this whole conversation. Moving on is not the same thing as forgetting. I think that's so important. When people tell you to move on, what they often mean, whether they realize it or not, is stop feeling anything about it. Stop being sad. Stop being angry. Stop longing for what you lost. Stop grieving. In other words, they're asking you to erase the emotional footprint of one of the most significant relationships in your life. And when you can't do that, because of course you can't, you may interpret your inability as evidence that there's something wrong with you. But real moving on is not erasure. Real moving on is integration. So, what does that mean? It means learning how to carry the loss without allowing it to dominate your entire life. Those are very different things. One asks you to pretend the loss no longer matters, whereas the other allows the loss to matter without allowing it to become the whole of who you are. So, I'm going to tell you about Rose. She's estranged from a sibling. She is completely clear that contact with her sibling is just damaging for her. She knows with every rational part of her mind that this distance is healthier. But then she hears a song from childhood or sees two siblings laughing together in a cafe, watches her own children, ask why they never see their aunt. And suddenly there is that grief, hits her again like a wall. She doesn't mean that she wants to go back. It doesn't mean that the boundary was wrong. Um, it means the relationship matters. It means the loss has meaning. And meaningful losses don't just disappear because a decision was necessary. That's really important. And the goal is not to stop caring, even though you want the pain to stop. Because if you still care about the person you're estranged from, that doesn't make you weak or foolish. You know, it's just so very human. And we don't want to erase. I mean, again, the goal isn't to erase what happened. That isn't what this is about. What happened matters. It shaped you, it affected you, and pretending otherwise isn't a strength. That's denial. The real goal then is to build a life that becomes bigger than the estrangement, a life where estrangement is part of your story, but not the whole story. And this is tough. A life where you have enough meaning, connection, purpose, safety, and joy that estrangement no longer occupies the center of everything. So your life doesn't revolve around this anymore. And that is what healing can look like in the context of this ambiguous loss. It's not the complete absence of pain. We still feel it. It's the expansion of everything else around the pain. So the pain's still there, but it's taking up less room. That's so important to hold on to. So I want to say something directly to those of you who are maybe years into your estrangement and still find yourselves affected by it. Maybe you made the decision to go contact 5 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe even longer. Maybe you have also been in therapy. Maybe you've done quite a lot of inner work on yourself. Maybe all the external measures, by according to those, you might have moved on with your life. So, yeah, there are still moments when it hits you, the anniversary of the estrangement, perhaps that comes around, or a family wedding, and you feel the ache of everyone who's not there, or Christmas. So any of these, a child is born, someone gets ill, a parent ages, you see a sibling post a photo. So suddenly the loss becomes vivid again. If that's your experience, I want you to know that doesn't mean you are stuck. It doesn't mean your healing has failed. And it doesn't mean you made the wrong decision. It simply means you are living with one of the most complicated forms of loss a human being can experience. I want to pause here because this is not theoretical for me. I still grieve. I still feel that. I still find Mother's Day painful. Not because I regret the distance and not because I believe the decision was wrong, but because I'm human and because there is still a part of me that grieves that relationship, that the one that I wanted, the one that I didn't have. Some years the grief is quieter. Some years it catches me in a card aisle, in a social media post, or in the sudden ache of seeing someone else being mothered, you know. And when it comes, I try to recognize it as grief, not as evidence that I'm cruel or that I haven't moved on or that I haven't healed. So I want to give you a different way to measure healing. Don't measure it by how rarely you think about the estrangement. Measure it by what happens when you do think about it. So when the feeling comes, does it consume you for days or does it move through you more quickly than it used to? That's a really important, interesting question. Does it pull you into a spiral that you can't escape from? Or can you acknowledge it and still return to your day? Can you feel grief and also feel gratitude for the life you've built? Can you miss someone and still know that distance was necessary? Can you hold love and reality at the same time? If the intensity has shifted, if the duration has shortened, if your ability to hold the pain alongside everything else has grown, then you are healing. Even if the thoughts still come, even if the feelings still visit you, the transformation isn't always and the disappearance of pain, which I think is how we tend to think about it. It's often the transformation is often your relationship with it, that's where the change is. And there's another layer here that also doesn't get talked about enough, and that is that the expectation to move on can become an additional source of pain. So when people around you or the voices in your head, it's not always coming from the outside, is it? Keep insisting that you should be over this by now. You're now carrying two burdens. You're carrying the grief of the estrangement itself, and then you're carrying the shame about the fact that you're still feeling pain and grieving. So now you're not just in pain, you're also like nudging yourself or attacking yourself for being in pain. That double burden is exhausting, and it is built on a false premise. The false premise is that family estrangement is a simple loss with a clear endpoint that should resolve within this socially acceptable time frame. Once you understand that estrangement is ongoing, ambiguous, culturally invisible, emotionally complex, the shame can start to lift. Not all at once, gradually over time, because as your experience begins to make sense, you'll be able to move forward. So you are not defective, you are not dramatic, you are not wallowing. How many times do I hear that word? You are responding normally to an extraordinarily difficult and often unrecognized form of loss. And if moving on the traditional sense isn't realistic, what is the alternative? Well, it's as I've already said, it's learning to live alongside the loss. So accepting that this particular kind of loss is never going to be fully resolved in the way you might hope. So giving yourself permission to feel whatever you feel without judging those feelings or trying to fast forward through them, as we do, recognizing that some days are going to be harder than others, and that a hard day doesn't erase all the progress you've made. People often think that that means they've, stepped backwards or that they're regressing. It's not that. It means that, you've got to try to build a life that's rich, meaningful, connected, not as a way to escape the pain, but as a way to make sure the pain isn't the only thing that's defining you. So that means understanding you can hold grief and gratitude in the same hand. I know it feels contradictory, but you can. You can miss someone and know that being apart from them was right. You can love someone and recognize that their presence was harmful in your life. So we're often holding these contradictory things. You can wish things had been different and still stop sacrificing a version of yourself in that relationship that didn't exist. So these contradictions aren't evidence that you're confused. They are evidence that you are human. So if you are living with family estrangement right now, whether it is a recent or long-standing situation that you're in, whether it was your choice or someone else's, whether you feel confident in the decision or whether you're questioning it constantly, just take this one thing from this video. You do not have to be over it. You do not owe anyone a performance of being fine. You don't have to have it all figured out. What you're carrying is real. And the fact that you're still carrying it doesn't mean you have failed. So the next time someone tells you to just move on, no matter who that is, whether it's your voice as well in the side of your head, so it might not be someone else, remember, I want you to remember this. Moving on is not a destination you arrive at. It's not a checkbox. It is the slow, courageous work of building a life that makes room for losses without allowing the loss to become your whole life. So maybe the better question is, why can I not move on? The better question is this: what would it mean to stop trying to get over this and start learning how to live beyond it? So if this video resonated, I'd be so grateful if you'd leave a comment and tell me what part hit home the most. If someone in your life is silently struggling with this, please share it with them. And, please, overall, above everything else, be gentle with yourself.